I'm Dr. G, and we're on the air. We're here with Engaging Minds. Every Sunday, we like to look at our world from a deeper, more psychological perspective. And one subject that's very important to me is the subject of addiction. I do a lot of work in it. And I feel that, especially at this time of year, a lot of insight needs to be brought to the subject. And trying to find some interesting ways to approach it, some fresh ways, is through the movie that we're going to talk about tonight, which is called A Star is Born. A lot of people have seen it, and it's a movie that focuses on love, fame, addiction. And I have Dr. Cassidy Blair. She's a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to the show, Cassidy.
Thank you very much for having me.
As a psychologist, how would you define addiction?
The substance becomes the pivotal issue actually for the life of the addict, and it consumes their activities, it consumes their lives, and they almost have no control over their urges at times, their cravings, and unfortunately what they do oftentimes succumb to that. So it's the brain disease, and I agree with that. And it's also a product of doing the same thing over and over again, and so trying to rewire the brain, trying to rearrange the thoughts, and pair associations would be one of the things that I think substantially would work in dealing with someone who has been an addict and has been used to or accustomed to giving in to certain activities. And
so in some respects, you have to create a new world for that person.
100%.
Through that therapeutic work.
Absolutely.
We glamorize addiction a little bit too much.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
It's sexy. The guy is...
But it's not just
ahead.
glamorizing it. It's actually what it is that people who have access to money and fame unfortunately get the wrong kind of validation from people. And that is oftentimes the reason that they get away with doing whatever it is that they want to do.
That's
so
true.
Most people around them validate and enable them. And in fact, in that movie, Star is Born, one of the things that really stood out for me was that as much as the character Lady Gaga really loved Bradley Cooper, but at the same time, she never stood up to him and she never demanded that he gets help. And the moment she got to be the star, she actually became comfortable and was preoccupied with, taking off her career. And no one around this guy ever stood up and said, you must get help and you must get clean. So as long as he could perform on the stage
Right,
and
it
he
was
could
the
tour,
business part of
it was
it.
okay.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I work with the clients.
We're going to have to actually take a break for a moment, but you bring up a great point.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times people who are dealing with addicts have ulterior motives.
Absolutely.
Or benefit.
Absolutely.
Or benefit.
Because
So as long as the
they
person
benefit.
can
Yes, they
perform,
benefit.
we
They
don't want to
codependent.
take any chances with the issue. We're focusing on A Star is Born, and one of the topics that is very evident in that film is the issue of fame, and that's something that is a big issue for a lot of people here in LA. Either they want it, they have it, or they absolutely don't want it. So I thought with our panel, I would introduce that topic and talk about sort of how the concept, how people can survive fame and notoriety no matter what field you're in. But before the commercials, we were talking about, really, I think we were talking about trauma. How would you deal with the issue of trauma?
Well, oftentimes in people who are suffering from addiction, they have had childhood traumas, as Dr. Raskin pointed out, and whether it's been abandonment or neglect or abuse, and abuse comes in the form of emotional, psychological, mental, or sexual, as we know it, or physical. But they have to really be able to deal with that. But just like Dr. Raskin pointed out, it's important to really make sure that they're medically clear and that they're not going to be triggered once you go into those traumas, and then also attachment of the secure attachment versus insecure attachment they've had with a parent figure, particularly with mother and then with father. So those are really important points. And in the movie, actually, you could see how Jackson basically had really didn't have his mother or his father actually present, and it was his brother that practically took care of him.
But as he starts to form a secure attachment with Allie, he's able actually to deal with a lot more. There's a point where it said that they've never seen him this happy. So
it is.
I think the idea is to hopefully try to replace eventually that.
Eventually. But I actually, in my practice, what I do is that I demand that all clients not only abstain from the substance, but also no dating, no sex. And the reason is because
there could be a cross addiction.
Absolutely. Cross addiction for love addiction, sex addiction.
Fun, yeah.
And unfortunately, you also attract the wrong people. You attract the people who really more attracted to the fame and money and resources that you provide. And then you become isolated, like Nicole said, but also you surround yourself with very few people who really have a benefit and their own agendas.
Well, I think a lot of times people who are dealing with addiction tend to choose the wrong people.
Absolutely.
Right. One of the things I hear so much, and I want to hear from our panel, is the loneliness. And you really get that, the isolation, right, Dr. Blair?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The isolation is actually quite huge because they can't trust everyone. So they have a hard time trusting people. They have a hard time letting people in, period, because they do recognize on some level that everyone pretty much around them is there to get something out of them. So, but sometimes, unfortunately, at the same time, they really attract the wrong people that they do trust. And those people are codependent and enablers oftentimes. Even parents, imagine like someone who's famous actor or famous singer even, or anyone. Oftentimes their parents or family members want a piece of their success financially.
Yep.
So the parents
think about these young
Exactly.
stars who are now taking care of their parents.
Exactly. So the parents is not going to stand up and say, go get clean up. I don't care about your fame, your money. I want you to be healthy. They do not demand that.
Well,
sometimes,
because that will then interfere with
their,
the
that's
machine.
what we talked
The
about,
machine.
the machine.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We do have a caller. His name is John. He's from Costa Mesa. I want to welcome him on the show. And John, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Like this, discussing about addiction. And the aspect that I wanted to bring up is that in the aftercare that one of the psychotherapists was speaking about, it's been my experience. I was addicted to heroin and various other drugs and alcohol for over 24 years. I've been clean and sober for 23 years. And the one thing that's helped me the most is the fraternity of other recovering addicts or alcoholics where you can interact with somebody that has been through something that you're going through. And to me, I've never found anything like that. And that's the main way. I've been a psychotherapist since I was 12 years old. I've been a psychologist. I've been in different programs, and nothing has ever worked like that of just, one addicted person that's in recovery helping another one. That's the aspect that I wanted to bring up to the panel.
No, I really appreciate that. I'm actually going to have our panel go around and briefly respond to you. Go. No, just let me say one quick thing, and then I want to hear from Dr. Blair.
Sure.
In the film, that's so much of what Jack does is that he connects with Allie, the Lady Gaga character, and that's the beginning, really, in some respects, of his healing until it all goes wrong.
But that's exactly why I wanted to interject here, because you're absolutely correct, and John had a wonderful experience. We're all happy for him. The problem is that when you just connect with someone who doesn't have the ethical responsibility and does not have the clinical background, formal education, and does not really have an obligation per se to the client, to the patient, they may not have all the tools they need to have to deal with exactly the addiction that's going on. And in this case of the movie, in fact, that was the case with Allie, because she cared about him greatly,
but she didn't have the
she did not have the skill set, and she actually enabled him and was codependent pretty much on his illness, and really never stood up to him and say, I don't care about you touring and performing on the stage. I want you to get healthy and whole, because she didn't understand the concept of addiction, and she didn't have the tools to deal with it. So while it's great to go to a 12-step program, I think, to bring it back full circle and really maybe be able to pair up with a sponsor or someone that you can relate to, it's important to really, like Jody pointed out, find someone you can connect with, trust, and be able to lean on, who does have the ability, the skill set to help you throughout this journey that could be incredibly lonely and scary.
I hope our audience gets how complex this issue is. And, a lot of times our egos can get in the way of us getting the treatment that we need. And I was thinking that with the character of Jack and how he relates to Allie and how the empowerment that she's starting to experience may feel like a threat to him.
I remember that when he came in, when she was actually in the bathtub, he basically said, "You're so ugly."
Right.
And so,
so shaming.
I actually saw it a different in a different way too. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes my clients who are dealing with addiction, they come into the session and they lash out and they're angry and they use the different kind of words, including like, I resent this process. I resent that you want me to be committed. And I really don't think, obviously, that I know that what they're doing is that they're projecting the anger and the fear onto me. It's not me that they resent. And oftentimes I work with, middle-aged men who are very successful, very famous celebrities, and people that really have a lot of fame and success with them financially speaking. So when she said, what she said actually was quite profound. She said, you're so scared, and she said, you are so embarrassed of yourself that you have to put me down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much about the empowerment, I think, that he was necessarily feeling threatened by it, because I think that even if Ali was a guy, she would still, I think Jackson would still lash out and be angry because he had no outlet to resolve the trauma and the pain and the abandonment and all that he was really, the void that she could see through him at the onset. He never had an outlet for that. That place was not really.
I think that's a great point. We only have a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure Dr. Blair gets out her information. So go ahead and share it with our audience.
Information
and then Nicole.
Thank you. It's Blair Wellness Group, and my phone number is 310-999-4996. I also have a concierge private practice in Beverly Hills. And I'm also available for house calls, and I do weekends and evenings for certain clients. And I just want to emphasize on the treatment being holistic really should inevitably include structure, consistent boundaries, and healthy attachment and proper care across the board, so patients can really benefit from consequence, structure, and really consistency the most, I think.
Thank you very much for sharing that information. That's great advice. It was great insight. I know we could spend another 6 hours talking about this, but unfortunately we don't have that opportunity. I hope what our audience gets out of this is the one simple message, that this is a very complex issue, and there's many ways of dealing with it, and we tapped some of them. And again, I think storytelling can be such a powerful way of doing that. So thanks everyone for coming on the show. I'm Dr. G. We'll be back next week.